it's not all the stories that you tell on social media. AI cannot actually tell your story in the way you would tell it. Even though AI can enhance how you tell your story, but AI should not take away your creativity to actually write and tell your story. Your profile is actually your words and how you do what you do. Why the space, which is where you share, is an opportunity to talk about your why of the things you do and your story, and that's how people can connect with you. So we would like to talk about social media. Like I said, this is like a segue to having conversation around social media, because I think social media is a vehicle to telling our story. I think social media can be a powerful tool to tell our story. I understand social media has its own complexities. I understand it has its own challenges, but I think it's been a powerful place where people have raised money for different causes, where people have built positive brand. It has given people that freedom to be able to, even advertise their products. Space for free share of information. But I also understand that there are some complexities around that as well, and there are some challenges around that as well. But I want to really deconstruct the idea of social media, and I have my own reservation around social media too. That as much as social media allows freedom of speech and people sharing, it sometimes takes away somebody's freedom as well, because somebody's monitoring you on your WhatsApp status, somebody's monitoring you as you drop a post to come into your DM to ask you for money. So and in that way, some people stop sharing. I had many people who have stopped sharing because it's difficult for them to share. They don't want to tell their stories anymore because of the baggage that comes with it. And I had to come to the understanding myself and the reflection that I would keep sharing, that I don't care, people would, it's none of my business. I'll be sharing because there's one person who will read that message and will be inspired. And it's the reason why I've kept sharing and telling my story. But don't let us go there. We can talk about social media and the importance as well. One of the things that research have shown that over half of consumers have chosen to do business with a freelancer or company today because of a strong positive online presence. And it's the reason why you have to build a positive online presence on social media. The way you comment, the way you respond to comments, it could harm you. Like a negative comment can affect you and can affect your brand. I've seen people have been sacked at work because of the way they respond. And for me, it's like social media is an extension of real life. So if that's an extension of real life, as I communicate in real life and I'm aware of real life, I also have to be aware of social media as well. And that's why I think it takes a lot of self-awareness to deal with the excessiveness of social media. So the way you communicate, the way you share, the way you respond to people, in a very, very respectful manner, the way you even disagree with people, right? That you can disagree with people on social media, and that's fine that you don't agree with the thoughts. It's not every thought that you probably agree with on social media. If you agree with every thought on social media, that means you don't have the mind of your own. But again, how do we actually disagree respectfully in a space of social media? Because one of the things is that there's something called online reputation management, which means that your reputation is being built over time on social media, and that can decide the kind of opportunities that you get and the opportunities that you don't get. I could recall that many of the opportunities that I got in the early days were through the stories that I told on social media. I could recall that my first radio program where I spoke was gotten through LinkedIn, for example. I met Shegilola Wolesi, I think that's her name. Yeah, Shegilola Wolesi, inspiring person, who loves young people and change makers. And I could recall that, it was a story that I told in 2018. I could recall I told the story and I tagged her in that story. And she then, I think about 5 minutes or 5 minutes later, she reached out to me to be like, do you want to come on the radio to talk about this? And that was my first radio show. I spoke on the radio, reached, millions of people. And I could recall also using that particular story in my Chivning application and in my MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program application as well, right? And and I've used that in other applications as well, right? So it's how you can build up your story using social media that, if nobody is publishing you, you can actually publish yourself. And social media actually offers you that avenue to actually publish yourself and build a brand that you want the world to see, that you can start writing your story through social media, that you can reintroduce yourself to the world using social media, that social media can be a positive tool for personal branding and for social change. So this is like my LinkedIn as well. Also, another thing about social media as well that I want to talk about is that what does your profile actually look like? Because if you also tell a story, when you tell that story, people want to check your profile. But if they check your profile and they don't see anything, then they can't read about things that you've done, then there's a challenge already. And I think that's it with LinkedIn, right? You know, if you probably tell a story, people should be able to come onto your LinkedIn page or your Facebook page or whatever page you have to be able to see the things you do and to be able to connect to the opportunities that align to who you are and what you do, right? So it's not about also telling stories, it's also what's on your profile, right? So your story can be actually the why, right? It can be the why of what you do, but what you do have to be on your profile so that people can easily read actually what you do on your profile. So it's very, very important to make that connection and to make that sync that your profile is actually your words and how you do what you do, why the space, which is, you know, where you share, is an opportunity to talk about your why of the things you do and your story. And that's how people can connect with you. So don't start telling story without actually making sure that you're making the connection to your social media page as well. So again, it's also one of the ways where you can send somebody a connection request. So if there's somebody that you think has gotten some certain value and you want to connect with, like there were really top people that I connected with on social media that have gotten, you know, they are like extremely incredible people. Winnie Yanyima is one of them. And I could recall that I connected with her. She's the executive director of UNAIDS at the time when I connected with her. And I sent her a request, right? And I was thinking, oh, this big person, would they accept my request? But they did accept my request. And I was reflecting like, why did they actually accept my request? And when I thought about it, I came to realize that the reason why they accepted my request was because of my, maybe my profile, because of what I do, right? And the way I've been able to like arrange my profile as well to make sure that, you know, I can actually connect with people and I have a value to offer, right? If you want somebody to see your work, you then connect with them and they're able to see your work because of that, right? But if you don't have anything on your profile, you can't say that you want to start connecting with people. So you also have to have something on your profile to be able to connect with people as well, right? And that's one of the ways you can build your online, you know, space or your online brand as well. Same thing with connecting with Jacqueline Novogratz, who is like the founder of Acumen as well. It was also the same belief and the same ideal as well. So again, you know, you might imagine that social media would not have a rule, but actually, you know, because of the excessiveness of social media, I think it then requires for us to have a rule for it as well, right? But I'm not the one defining the rules. Probably, maybe there are some powerful people who will probably be defining the rules for themselves. But I'm not defining the rules. For me, I believe that there are no rules to social media. You define the rules and you set the tone, right? You know, define what you're putting out there. You define, you know, the words you share out there on social media. You define how you actually engage with people and you define how you want to interact with social media as well, right? You know, how long do you want to be posting on social media? Do you want to be posting 3 times a week? Or do you just want to be posting once a week, right? You want to be posting even twice a month. So you define the rules and you set the tone for yourself, right? And you can build your own cadence, you know, for social media, like we talked about cadence when I was talking about consistency before. Another thing is that, you know, when you make mistakes, maybe in your text or what you're writing, you know, you own your mistake. And one thing that I've learned from the process of like actually writing, I mean, I have been writing since 2017 and, you know, on social media actively. And one of the things that I've learned through that process that people don't actually look at the error but the message, right? So far you're passing the message and so far you're giving value, you can actually tell your story and then it builds you up your confidence. And one of the things that I've learned in that process is that now you've gotten even AI, right? You've gotten tools like Grammarly that can edit your text as you're writing there. You know, where you can use generative AI to actually edit your essays for you and then edit, you know, some of your content so that it reduces the error as well, right? You know, you now have AI, you know, like I said, AI is here to stay, right? We have to love it, but again, it enhances the work that we do so that we can actually do quality work. You can also adopt the use of video in telling your story, right? Videos in telling your story. Videos, you know, works really well, you know, on social media, especially when you combine it with the context and the text. And I think, you know, one of the most engaged contents now on LinkedIn, I think 30 to 39%, I can't remember the exact percentage, actually is one of the ways, you know, LinkedIn generates its own engagement. Like, you know, like most people engage with videos now on LinkedIn, right? So it's also a way you can be telling your story, that you can diversify the way you also tell your story, that it doesn't have to be, text every time. You can use videos like I'm doing now as well. I'm just trying to also diversify the way I communicate, because I understand that words, messages can get lost in words or in text sometimes. And it could be a lost writing, especially if you're writing for social media and you're not writing a book. So it's very important for you to be able to deconstruct and unpack those your thought processes through the videos that you produce and you share on social media. Be consistent. I think it's one of the rules that I've come up with. So these are my rules, not anybody's rule as well. Be consistent in telling your story and engage other people's post or comment as well if you've gotten the time to do so. That helps you with your engagement, but be consistent in telling your story. I can't say that enough. I've said that before. Don't just talk, do the work as well. I think there's something about, social media is that, don't just, talk. You don't just come and tell story, work as well. Because it's when you work, you're able to use that work to match the stories that you tell. So that when people meet you on social media, you're not a different person than who you are real life, right? I think most of the time people tell me that oh, you're actually the same way you are on social media, like the way you reflect, the way you talk, the way you share. So one of the things that I try to do is that I don't want to have a different persona on social media and people meet me in real life and I'm different. I want that persona that I portray on social media, things that I see on social media, to actually match who I am as an individual as well when people meet me in person. And that's why I say, don't just talk, do the work as well, right? And I think it's also when you do the work that you're able to tell a story as well, right? And share on social media. There was somebody, who I deeply admire and respect. I think there were multiple people who thought that maybe I wouldn't have anything to share again on social media. And to be honest, I'm still scared that I might probably not have stories to tell again. I'm always scared like that. But one of the things that I've learned and reflected on that, if you do, you would always have a story to tell. So far you are engaging with life. So far you're taking responsibilities. So far you're involved, with one or two things. So far you're trying to find the chaos and building order. You would always have a story to tell, right? I was talking about chaos and order in one of my posts recently. And I'm I love uncertainty. I love chaos. I love, when it's extremely difficult and hard, because that's the way I learn and I grow, and that's the way I draw my lessons. And people can draw inspiration from that lesson as well. And that lesson can help me, because the lessons we learned in the past is what helps us in the present and in the future. Right? If we do, that's when we learn. If you engage, that's when we learn. If you fail, that's when we learn, right? It's only when we do that we have stories to tell. And that story can be an inspiration and lessons for ourselves and lessons for other people as well. Because lessons are not just meant for other people. It's also meant for ourselves as well. And that's why we've gotten history. That our past is our history. And that past is there for us, to support us through the present and the future. And to build up the learnings that we'll learn as we go on our journey, right? So don't just talk, do the work as well. Again, it's not about what you say that matters, but what you said or read, right? So sometimes you say something and we're worried about what we say, but it's the way people interpret what they've heard, and that's fine. In the way they interpret it, people can interpret it differently. But for me, it's how do I also understand the interpretation of others? So when somebody says this is what I've heard or read from my post or from my content, I want to learn their perspective, because that perspective gives me multiple perspectives to actually see things in different ways and different lights. And I'll be actually, I wasn't seeing it that way. So again, it's the way we also engage in real life. It's the way we engage in a conversation, right? It's the way we engage in debates that our perspective cannot be the most correct perspective, that we can learn from other people's perspective as well. And social media should be a center for that, Social media should be a center to sharing perspective and diverse perspectives so that we can learn from each other. And also if you're trying to use social media for advocacy, you can also combine data with lived experience, right? I think, this is something that I used to say, that you can't just say that this is the 50% statistics of this and this. People will not get it by just sharing statistics. What are the stories behind that data? What are the stories behind the statistics as well, right? There are stories behind the data, and those stories can be different and can be different as well. So how do you actually tell that story as well as you share on social media? That you just want to come on social media to say, 50%, are out of school in the northern part of Nigeria. You can't just come like that and share that statistics. How do you ground that particular idea or that particular statistics in a story? And one story is that story of Adamu, who could not do this. You're already grounding that data in a particular story and lived experiences as well. And I think that can be a powerful tool on social media to drive advocacy, to raise money, and to enhance our work. And and it works like magic. It's just like you're personalizing, right? You're personalizing to actually tell that story, because when you personalize that story, it's something that actually resonates with people, because then people can feel like, I feel connected to that story. I can feel that story. What if that is my child? What if that is my daughter? What if that is my son? I mean, no matter what stories we tell, whether in advocacy or we're just sharing our personal journey, people can empathize better when we have a shared story, right? That even shared story doesn't have to be told, on just social media. That shared story can be told one-to-one, and we can reimagine our humanity by hearing our story, right? That when we sit together in a room and we share stories, that it can be powerful, that we can understand each other better, we can empathize with each other better, that we don't have to compare ourselves to each other, that we can actually draw inspiration from each other and ground ourselves by learning and by listening and by seeking, for stories and for knowledge. Because I love to seek stories, because it grounds me. And that's why I'll be like, oh, I'm not going to be comparing myself with that person, because that's their journey, that's their uniqueness. They are completing a puzzle, and I'm completing another puzzle. But I'm inspired by their story, and I'm also inspired by my journey as well, right? And there's something on social media that I want to talk about, which is, it's like a kind of like a strategy, right? It's like, how do you connect on social media? So there's something I call strategic adding. So I kind of like add people that want them to see my work, right? If I want somebody to see my work now, I'm going to add them, because you never can tell, right? And strategic adding then works with, strategic reporting. That social media can be a place where you can strategically share your work and tell your story. And then the person you've added can then see your work and then connect you to opportunity, right? And that has happened to me, multiple times. And I'm like, strategy sharing, talking about your work. I could remember that, again, I went to Saudi Arabia I think last year, and, to participate in the Town Mega Challenge as an international creative. And, I was flown there, when I got to the airport, we were picked on the Jeep, we go to the airport, we go to like, a 5-star hotel, we're really, really like taken care of. And I remember that, I asked the organizers that, how did you find me? And they said they found me on social media. And I was wondering, really? And I said, how? They said, oh, we went on social media and we typed, who are the people actually speaking about refugees? And your name came out. And that's how we reached out to you. And I'm like, sometimes you don't have to apply to get an opportunity. You can apply by actually showing up. You can apply by actually telling your story and telling the story of your work, no matter how small or how big that work is. You can apply to do that. And that's the idea of strategic reporting, that there's a sponsor out there who will see your work and then connect you to an opportunity as well, right? And there's also strategic tagging. If you want to tag somebody to be able to see your work, I don't do that again. But there were times that I used to tag people that I want them to see my work. So I could recall there was an interview, I was tagging some group, and there was an interview I had with them maybe a year later. And when I got to the interview and I introduced myself, they were like, the interviewer said, we are a huge fan of you. We're a huge fan of your work. We've seen you multiple times. And that kind of changed this for me. I was like, what is that? I didn't know that was happening. I didn't know that as I was tagging them, they were actually reading my content and they were reading my story, and they already knew when I came in. So again, these are ways you can also advance yourself on the world of social media and make sure that people can actually get your information, especially if you have the background of myself, growing up in a place like the slum. Social media has created a leveler for us to enhance our work, right? And we can use this for social good, we can use it for personal branding, and we can use it to advance ourselves and advance our cause. Whenever I teach storytelling or I speak about social media, this is something that I usually share. With people as well, especially young people. And there is no one who can tell your story better than you are. If you do not blow your trumpet, who will? And the truth is, there is a sponsor waiting for you to share. Your failure to share means they will not have access to your work when opportunity arises. And when opportunity arises, they have limited information to share about you. And that is how you lose some opportunities. Your sponsor is waiting for you to share. So go on, share, and tell your story. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening. God bless you.